The desert was still, the kind of stillness that felt dangerous, like the pause before a predator strikes. Then came the sound. A sharp crack split the air. Not thunder. There were no clouds here. It was the whip. A man stumbled forward, his bare feet sinking into sand so hot it could sear flesh. The chains on his ankles clinked with every step, each link rubbing his skin raw. Sweat streamed down his face, mixing with dust, until his skin was caked in a thin mask of mud. In the distance, a shadow rose. Massive. Impossible. The half-built pyramid towered over the horizon, its gleaming white stone reflecting the sun like a blade. From up close, it wasn't just a monument. It was a beast, swallowing men whole, brick by brick. Another crack. The man, Kamari, did not cry out. He had learned not to. Somewhere behind him, the overseer's voice bellowed in a language he could only understand when it meant pain. All around, other men strained against ropes, their bodies bent like drawn bows, dragging a stone block heavier than 10 men. Flies buzzed around open wounds, the air shimmered with heat. Kamari's vision blurred, and in the blur, for just a heartbeat, he saw green hills, a river, a small girl laughing as she chased goats. Then the image shattered, as the whip found his back again. He clenched his teeth, tasting blood. Ahead, the pyramid's shadow crept closer. Behind, the whip coiled for another strike. And somewhere in between, a thought flickered in his mind. Dangerous, almost impossible. What if I ran? The first light of day spread slowly across the desert, washing the horizon in pale gold. Even before the sun had fully risen, the air was already warm, carrying the dry taste of dust. The slave quarters stirred with the muted sounds of bodies shifting, groaning, and bracing for another day of labor. Kamari opened his eyes to the low ceiling of packed mud. His body ached in familiar ways, the dull throb in his shoulders, the sharp burn along his back, where fresh scars crossed old ones. He rose without a word. In this place, mornings were silent, the quiet born not of peace, but of exhaustion. The door to the quarters creaked open, flooding the room with blinding light. Rahotep, the overseer, filled the frame, his whip coiled in his hand like a serpent ready to strike. "On your feet, dogs," he barked, his voice sharp as flint. "The sun waits for no man, and neither do I." Chains clinked as the men stood. The iron cuffs at Kamari's ankles were heavy, rubbing the skin raw. They shuffled out into the open, squinting at the pyramid in the distance. It rose like a mountain against the sky, unfinished, yet already vast, a monument to a pharaoh's name that none of them would ever speak in honor. The work began immediately. Teams were assigned to the quarry, the ramps, the sledges. Kamari joined a line of men harnessed to ropes thick as a man's wrist, their task to drag a limestone block from the quarry floor up toward the construction site. The stand was still cool in the morning, but it would not stay that way for long. Sweat broke on his forehead within minutes. The block resisted every step, as though it were part of the earth itself and resented being moved. "Pull!" Rahotep's whip cracked through the air, striking the shoulder of the man ahead of Kamari. The man grunted, but didn't stumble. Stumbling invited more pain. By midday, the sun had turned the sand to fire. Kamari's feet burned even through his thin wrappings. The air shimmered in waves, making the horizon quiver. A shout erupted behind them. Masego, a broad-chested man from the southern lands, had collapsed. His lips cracked, his eyes half closed. Rahotep didn't hesitate. "Get up or die where you fall," he snarled. When Masego didn't move, 2 guards dragged him away, limp like a sack of grain. Kamari's stomach twisted, not just with hunger, but with the knowledge that he might not see his friend again. The day dragged on, a blur of heat, sand, and aching muscles. The sun seemed to stand still overhead, refusing to move toward mercy. By the time the overseers called for the men to return, the pyramid's shadow had stretched long across the desert. Back in the quarters, they were handed their rations, a piece of coarse bread, hard at the edges, and a wooden cup of water just warm enough to taste of metal. Kamari ate slowly, as if drawing out the act would trick his stomach into thinking it had more. Night settled, cool and quiet. Around him, men shifted in the darkness, some already asleep, others murmuring prayers in languages the overseers did not know. Somewhere in the corner, someone wept softly. Kamari lay on his side, staring at the crack of starlight that slipped through the doorway. The sound of the desert at night was different, softer, almost tender. For a brief moment, he let his thoughts drift to a riverbank far away, where his sister's laughter had once filled the air, but the memory faded quickly, swallowed by the silence and the weight of another day ahead. The sun rose sharp and white, burning the sky bare of clouds. There was no gentle dawn today, just a sudden blaze, as if the heavens themselves had decided to punish the earth. Kamari's back was still raw from the previous day, each movement pulling at the wounds. He stood in the work line with the others, his eyes fixed on the horizon, avoiding Rahotep's gaze. Today's task was worse. Instead of smaller stones, they were to haul a single slab from the far quarry to the pyramid's second ramp. The block was taller than a man, its pale face gleaming in the sunlight. Thick ropes looped around it, and 10 men were harnessed to each side like beasts of burden. "Move it," Rahotep barked, pacing alongside them. His whip swung idly in one hand, but everyone knew it could strike without warning. The ropes bit into his hands, already blistered and cracked. He leaned forward, muscles straining, every breath a hiss between clenched teeth. Sand shifted treacherously beneath his feet, making each step heavier. Hours passed, the slab creeping forward inch by inch. Sweat ran freely, stinging their eyes. Flies swarmed their faces, drawn to the salt. At midday they were given a pause, not for rest, but for a small wooden bowl of thin lentil gruelie. Kamari sat in the narrow shadow of the stone, gulping down the lukewarm paste. Across from him, Zahara struggled under the weight of a load of bricks, her back bowed, her lips pale. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, not long enough to draw suspicion, but enough to remind him they were still human. The break ended too soon. The work resumed, now slower, the men faltering under the relentless heat. Then disaster struck. One of the side ropes slipped, the stone shifting dangerously. The sled lurched sideways into the sand with a deafening thud. Rahotep's head snapped toward them. "Who let it fall?" His voice was low, dangerous. His eyes scanned the line, then fixed on Kamari. Before he could speak, the whip lashed out. Once, twice, 10 times. Each strike seared like fire, cutting through sweat and skin. Kamari's teeth clamped shut so hard his jaw ached, refusing to give Rahotep the satisfaction of a scream. When it was over, Rahotep spat in the sand. "Lift it again, or I'll make you all wish you'd been born dead." And they did. By the time the stone reached the ramp, the sky had darkened to red. The men moved like shadows, too tired to speak. Kamari's back was a raw map of pain, each breath tugging at the wounds. That night, Masego slipped him a damp cloth stolen from the overseer's water jar. He dabbed it gently against Kamari's back. "You'll carry those marks forever," Masego murmured. Kamari's voice was hoarse. "So will you. So will we all." Outside, the desert wind sighed, carrying with it the faint smell of the river, though it was too far to touch. The morning began like every other, the metallic clink of shackles, the rough shove toward the worksite, but by midday the heat had taken on a new, merciless weight. The air shimmered like molten glass, and the very sand seemed to burn from beneath. Kamari's tongue felt thick in his mouth, his lips had cracked in the night, and now every breath was a scrape of pain. The Nile was somewhere far beyond the dunes, yet it felt like a cruel mirage, a dream too distant to ever be real. They were assigned to the upper ramp today, where the unfinished pyramid loomed overhead like a giant's coffin. The stone blocks they hauled scraped against the wood, leaving splinters deep in their hands. With each pull, the muscles in Kamarin's arms threatened to tear. "Keep moving," Rahotep's voice cut through the groaning of ropes and stone. He carried his whip loose at his side, the way a man might carry a dagger, casually, but ready to draw blood. Kamari stumbled when a sudden gust of wind blew sand into his eyes. He raised an arm instinctively, just for a heartbeat, but that heartbeat was enough. The whip cracked against his shoulder, tearing through skin. Kamari gritted his teeth and pulled harder. The stone moved forward, but each step felt heavier than the last. His vision blurred. The air was too thick, too hot, and every swallow of breath brought more